Hey kids, it's Jurassic James and Jurassic Explains looking at Nothosaurus. So Nothosaurus is something that it's one of those creatures once again that no one knows really exists until recently. So I'm really excited about it. First, I want to point out that we have the same rules. We have a newer to older. I only have older to newer models. I only have three. But in general, when I point out Nothosaurus, they are marine reptiles, and the name Nothosaurus actually means false lizard because when they were first discovered, they thought they were a normal kind of lizard or classified as modern lizards. And look at the skeleton, you go, oh, this is very slender, it's designed for the ocean, or marine lifestyle, so basically it's a marine reptile. Now, the fun thing is, or the interesting thing is, we know, as I've seen in a marine reptiles video, about plesiosaurs, and ichthyosaurs, and pliosaurs, and mosasaurs. These guys were described back in the 1800s just like them, but for some reason, these guys are well known, and they're not. So my best guess is they show up in a Jurassic period, and they're extinct by the end of the Jurassic period. And of course, these guys are from Jurassic, Cretaceous, and Cretaceous late shower. So these guys, I mean, they had a longer span of time. Mosasaurs themselves are found in North Africa, Europe, and Asia. So they're found pretty widely distributed, and just distributed. And the time frame is about 240 to 210 million years ago. So the first Nothosaur figure I have is this little guy here. This is from the prehistoric crocodile tube. It's a marine life tube from Safari. Like, there's no year on it, I don't believe. Yeah, but you buy those little tubes that come like Michael's Hobby Lobby. And so this one is actually my favorite depiction of the animal. What's really neat about it is that it has, when shown, these guys, we think had web toes. There's no evidence of that, but we think they did because they're living in marine sediment. And so many depictions show them being like pushing up and moving around. But often you see them in videos like prehistoric creatures. When Nigel Marvin dives down to prehistoric creatures, he's diving in Jurassic period. He sees Nothosaurus. They look just like this in their depictions, basically. So again, they're essentially like a seal crocodile hybrid kind of thing, or Komodo dragon mix. Like there's this different. What I like the most about them is that they are so familiar yet so different. They are not dinosaurs. There's a certain design dinosaurs have. If you can see enough models and species, you're like, okay, I get an idea. They're not the marine they're not plesiosaurs. They're different, and so they have their own kind of weird look to them, basically. So this guy, in my opinion, is one of the best ones. This is the one I use for my icon on my website, actually. So the next one I have, I believe it's Papo. No, Schleich. So if you want a bigger model, if your name is, say, Jim Connor, and you want a bigger model that's more accurate looking, this guy is, again, in a ocean or marine swimming kind of action stance. So this is really well known. What I like about these guys, or one thing that's weird about them, is that the nose is like right here, the eyes are here, and most animals the skull ends right there. The Nothosaurus, their eyes are in the middle of their skull, so it goes all the way back here. You can kind of see it better with this model here. And so this guy, if you're like looking for a more refined or nicer model, here's the one I would suggest. Of course, the next one we have is the Camp Cretaceous Jurassic World. If you don't know, there's a somehow, if you don't know, there's a Netflix animated show, basically, and I think it's 3 seasons now, and they show a Nothosaur, which is a really cool scene because no spoiler. Well, I don't want to spoil. Well, I can spoil it. So the kids go into the main characters, protagonists, go into a underground kind of structure, and there's water, open water there, and one of these guys jumps out of them, basically. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do my official. So this is Jurassic James. And to release this critter, cut there and there. And once again, we just pull up this right here. Now, box is pretty simple. Oh yeah, you can find it at the Target. I don't know why I went to Target for something, not Target, Kroger's. I went to Kroger's for something, and it was there. And I was like, what's all this then? So the idea is looking at this guy now. The first thing I want to point out compared to I'm going to use this larger model. Every depiction I've ever seen having 5 toes and 5 fingers. Usually, the first tetrapod, the first animal to walk on land, had 5 toes. We see those footprints in Scotland. And so the idea is that we know 5 toes is like the base level. There are low-fin fish in the Devonian period that have, like the coelacanth-like fish that have what essentially would be multiple finger. Well, they're not fingers, but in their fin, they have bones in their fin, and they have more than 5. But by the time you get on land, you have 5. And so both figures show that. Even the ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and pliosaurs, they have flippers, right? But under the flipper, you see almost like a hand. The finger, carpal, metacarpal, and the phalanges, the bones are there. So you see essentially where a finger's been or a hand's been condensed into a fin for better swimming. So there's no reason to believe that these guys didn't have 5. This toy only has 4, which is kind of annoying. And again, I would say that it's interesting that it's more kind of like upright in its design. But I do like is that the eyes are in the middle of the skull. They have these large holes in the back of the skull, and the jaws, the teeth are kind of like gnarly. Now, yeah, so they eat fish, squid. They're carnivores. They do have nostrils. They breathe air, so they are reptiles. They're marine reptiles. So their ancestors were on land and are in the ocean. It has been argued by some that one branch of Nothosaurus may have led to pliosaurs, like Liplorodon. But the idea is that, in general, I don't want you to look at it like, oh, this animal led something else, or it may have, it was at its own time, its own conditions, its own thing. So as far as contemporaries go, it lived with, actually, let's do it this way. So, big picture, going back in time. I want to point out that I'm putting a link below. I have a new section to my website where I have different time periods. So you can click on the Jurassic and you'll see what the Jurassic is, and there'll be like all the toys lined up by like time period and location, or like North America, Asia, and so on. So in big picture, I want to point out that in the Cambrian Ocean, about 500 million years ago, you have anomalocaris. Animals like this use kind of essentially weird bugs. In the Ordovician, the period after that, we have cephalopods like Cambriceros here. These guys I found on Amazon. There's no name or company, but if you just type in like Nothosaurus model or toy or Euryptera, you'll get these guys. So Cambrian, Ordovician, that visible, okay. The Eurypterid or sea scorpion is Pterygotus, so there's a same kind of brand. Then there's the Papodunculosteus. No, is this Papo? No, Schleit Dunculosteus, a placoderm armored fish. So what's going on is that there are many, these animals are kind of the icons of their time period in the ocean. And so, like I said, when this guy was in the Cambrian, when the Cambrian ends, they're extinct, right? The Ordovician, we have some of these guys, and the nautiloids live until today. The moderns have coiled shells. Eurypterids like Pterygotus here start in the Ordovician, but they end by the Permian. But the armored fish like Dunculosteus, their earliest known ancestors were like Silurian, and then we have the Age of Fish, Devonian, where we have these guys. Also in Devonian, the ammonites branch off from the nautiloids, and this is a safari ammonite. And then I mentioned this video before, the Helicoprion, this ratfish, formerly thought to be a shark, shows up in the Carboniferous. So we have again the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and I would say this is Permian because there are coelacanths in the Devonian and Carboniferous, but the one that we would kind of recognize more is in the Permian. So we see these different time periods here. Now, after the Permian extinction, the again greatest extinction of all time, we have the oceans are kind of wiped, almost not clean, but a lot of animals die out, and there's a rebounding, right? And so that's when Nothosaurus will show up. You have these guys and Arctinostropheus, this weirdo here. So Triassic is a time where, there are a lot of fish and sharks and stuff, and there's still fish and sharks in the Triassic, but a new branch of reptiles, lineages, go back into the ocean to replace some of these other predators because there's food available. Now, that's important because, again, by the time we get to the Triassic, we also have, now, I don't have any toys of them, they don't make toys of them, but the Ichthyosaurs, who are well known from the Jurassic period, show up in Triassic. They're often depicted without having the dorsal fin, but again, they're, and of course, the earliest plesiosaurs were like late in Triassic. So again, but they're found in Jurassic with the pliosaurs, and mosasaurs are Cretaceous. So you're kind of seeing a layout of the ocean's seas as they change environment. So in some ways, if you're a paleontologist and you were looking at a fossil set, or even a documentary, the picture, if you see certain animals, you go like, oh, this must be this time frame, right? And so the big thing, oh, not you, you stay over here. The big thing with the Nothosaurs is that these guys are a very iconic group, and they're defined to a certain time. So we know if you see a Nothosaur in the ocean in a documentary or a movie or anything, it's going to be the Jurassic period. Now, that being said, I want to kind of give a little bit of shout out or observation that Jurassic World, the toy line, although the toys are not super accurate, which is, here we are, I want to point out the excitement I have with the fact that they are giving light to many other creatures that are not just dinosaurs, right? So on that front, I will look at, for example, because it's believed, I mentioned this earlier, that Nothosaurus are thought to walk on land. I think there's a paper, I think in China, where they found these kind of like impressions in the mud. So it implies that and they ruled out all the animals in the area, basically saying that we see a certain set of tracks. Because if you didn't know this, when we find trace fossil tracks, we can't always say exactly what it is. Meaning that, for example, the opposite example of this is we find essentially a former horseshoe crab in the Jurassic period in Germany with there's footprints and there's a crab right there. So you can see it. That's pretty spot on. But usually when you find footprints and traces, we don't know exactly who made it. So in this situation, they are pretty, we can't say, we know for sure it's Nothosaurus, but the evidence suggests, looking at the way the tracks are made, looking at the bones that will be making the print, and comparing it to the other animals of that time frame and locality, Nothosaurs are like most likely suspect. So it's believed that these guys can go on land. And the best analogy I've ever heard, I saw them first, my own, and I thought, these are like this. And then I read some papers and they're like this. It's like, they're kind of like seals. So think of them as the reptile equivalent to a seal, or sea lion. And that these animals are of land ancestry, but they went back in the ocean. They spend most of their time in the ocean. And so the idea is that these guys are adapted that way. Now, that being said, I want to give some kind of attention to the Jurassic World connection because there are a lot of cool things going on here. First and foremost, whatever time scale, we have the Jurassic World Dimetrodon, and we have the Safari Dimetrodon. We have the Gorgon from Jurassic Park, the original Series 2 Gorgon, which is like Kenops. We have the Instrosevia, which is I think it's Safari. It is Safari, like Kenops right there. So this is the early Permian. Here's late Permian, awesome late Permian. I've already gone over Scutosaurus. This is Jurassic World Scutosaurus. And here I'm going to do it this way. And here is the Safari Scutosaurus, like that. Now, you have the Jurassic Permian extinction event. And so one thing to point out is Lystrosaurus, which is a Jurassic World figure, and then the Kayaptosaurus figure, so it's right there. So we have this change in time. And then we talk about mid-Triassic, we have on land in India, Shringosaurus. So there's a figure for that. And here's the Safari figure of the same Safari 2020. So this guy on land. In the oceans, when we have our Nothosaurs like that, and our Tinistrophius here. I've done videos on all of these guys actually. And so here's the Jurassic World version, and here's the Safari 1999 version. So they're around the same time frame and the old world. And finally, in the latest part of the Jurassic, we have a slight Postosuchus and a Jurassic World Postosuchus. So we're seeing, so here's kind of like, again, early Permian, late Permian, early Triassic, mid to late Triassic. So they're giving a lot of attention to these animals that are not normally focused on. So again, I know they're not the most accurate. I know they're not, I wouldn't use them to teach normally, given that they're what they are. But for me personally, it's really cool to see a focus on all of these different creatures from before, or at least right up until the time of dinosaurs. These are all animals that get no love or no observation or no appreciation, and they are here now to be looked at and appreciated in the Jurassic and Permian period. So that's why I want to point out this guy to you too. Again, I find them in Kroger's. They have a line of smaller ones selling in Kroger's, and also I think in Walmart and Target and all that, or online of course. I personally like to go to stores and find things. Maybe it's the paleontologist in me to go to the store and know what you should find. It should be this, and you found something, or you don't. So that's my whole thing. With that being said, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in, and let's appreciate Nothosaurus.